Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me. Day 11, picking up where we left off. Time to create that seat hump. My idea of creating an all-in-one tank cover seat unit may seem a little over-ambitious, but why not? All it lacked was a seat hump. I had a definite concept in mind of what I wanted the seat hump peak to look like, and I also wanted to maintain the rear seat loop tube as an easy means of picking up the rear of the bike should an adult wish to wheel the bike along on its front wheel. Now, the challenge was to create a seat and seat hump that people didn't lean on, try and pick the bike up with, because the structure isn't really ever going to be that heavyweight that it would take that. But people being what people are, if you can lean on something you shouldn't, or pick something up from a weak point, it'll happen. So that's in the back of my mind, that I have to make it structurally sound and slightly offset to the rest of the aluminium tank cover and seat, being a slightly heavier gauge or supported. Anyway, enough of the waffle. Let's see how I construct a seat. I decided to emulate the front fly screen as the radius for the seat hump. It's not a true race seat hump, so it can be slightly higher, which has a twofold benefit: a safety issue, nobody's going to slide off the back, and it makes it future proof that as my grandson grows, the seat will accommodate him, or the seat hump, because I don't want it to suddenly become a hazard a couple of years down the line where he's sliding off the back because I didn't build a high enough seat hump. So that's my reasoning for the shape and height of it. Now let's see the construction. I'll call the back of it the upright, and give me a bit of poetic license, this isn't a 90-degree upright. So the upright, I decided on the shape emulating the fly screen radius. I marked out this radius, then I marked out a radius similar, slightly further away from the original lines, and that was so I could create tabs. Each of these tabs would be bent 90 degrees, and they could be used for supporting the peak of the seat. Now, I've made these in the past, but I'm still making this up as I go along. So evolution is the name of the game. Tabs cut and bent. You've got to remember when you're bending these tabs, any metal that's bent constantly backwards and forwards weakens and eventually fails. So be aware, especially with aluminium, you don't just bend these tabs willy-nilly, because the last thing you want is them falling off. So the upright had been shaped, tabs formed, time for the peak. The peak evolved from the rest of the original TD3 replica tank. So the length and shape were constricted by the amount of material I had left. I wrapped it over the shape of the vertical seat upright, bending it by hand. It's only 1mm alloy, so it's easily workable. Just try not to put too many marks in it that you might regret later. Bending it to the shape, using the fly screen as a starting point, and then a suitable disc I had in the garage used for supporting sanding discs, and that was roughly the right radius. So I had a piece of aluminium bent roughly to the shape. All I had to do now was create the peak. So I loosely drew the curve of the peak, left a bit of space around this drawn shape because I like to fold the edge back on itself to create not quite a rolled edge, but certainly a safety edge, because hands might touch this area and I don't want it to become a cutting hazard. Shape decided, cut off the excess, bent it for this safety edge, went into the garage, used my large vise to tap this safety edge flattish. I find that the more I tap it a tight bend, the smoother it feels to the touch. Aluminium is very forgiving, and you can create what looks like a pointed area but a few taps with a toffee hammer and it starts to round off and smooth and become, well, user friendly. So the peak was cut and shaped. I placed it over the curvature of the seat and decided if I had overhang at the front of the peak, I could bend that down, create structural stability, have something to attach to the rear upright of the seat, and again take away any sharp edges. So that was it. Now I wasn't going to cut it into as many tabs as I had the upright. I wanted to create tabs on the peak that were large enough to give it structural strength and yet accept pop rivets, and that's what I did. Starting with the centre, drilled a 3.2 pop rivet hole, added a washer at the back just to spread the load even more, crunched the pop rivet, stood back and considered. Super. The key to this structural success was carefully shaping it around the curvature and drilling it while maintaining the tightness between the peak and the upright, and a simple pop rivet attachment at either side towards the base of the upright. So I had a 3-point mount which will be improved and increased when more supplies arrived, and I had a peak attached. Now the upright was still flexing at the bend with the seat base, and I've covered this in my description of it earlier, so that it was time to start beefing up this structural rigidity. Back in the garage, found a suitable piece of steel. It was an old long hinge. Cut off the not needed section, put a bend in it approximately halfway along its length, and then tried it against the seat. I'm going to cover this seat with waterproof race seat padding. It's adhesive, can be shaped, and it's used on lightweight seats for true road racing, but I like the workability of it. I like the fact that you can file a radius on it, shape it, and the glue seems to stick very well. So the seat padding is going to be on the vertical, on the horizontal, and up slightly over the front of the tank. It's going to be stuck to the parts where I see it as a pressure point issue. that's the plan. Now, things I'm considering at the moment, I like the red stripe on the tank, and I'm going to copy that onto the seat peak. The red stripe on the seat is obviously going to be covered by the seat padding, and then there's the off-white paint on the tank cover. I'm tempted to strip it all off, maybe redo the red stripe and see whether the alloy is decent enough underneath the paint to polish up, and then if it is, I'll live with the idea for a few days before I decide whether to leave it polished alloy, which could be nice, or painted white, which my TD3 was, and that also looked effective, being a Yamaha paintwork, red and white. Now, other things that arrived or are imminent: footrests and the throttle, so on a chain and split link. So that's what's coming, folks. Join me again soon for more on Noah's bike build. Thanks for watching.